I just figured out the 5 must-have elements in your product to create a profitable business. And I'm going to share it in this video today with you. I always wonder if my product manager course that I deliver really helps my students succeed. So I reached out to my past student Brandi Andres, who built a successful business, the Wellest, a retail store selling products that support sustainability. She shared with me 5 elements that made her retail store successful. And if you hang out with us till the end of this video, I will share a link to the free product worksheets to help you incorporate these elements in your product to build a profitable business. So without further ado, let's get more details from Brandi. Thank you for joining our podcast today, and I would really appreciate if you quickly introduce yourself.
Sure. I am Brandi Andres. I'm the owner of a modern mercantile, is what I call it. The name of the store is the Wellest. The reason why I call it a modern mercantile is that it's sort of a general store, if you will, but modern in the sense that the way a lot of people these days are really looking at products is things that actually fit and align with our values. So the type of products that I have in the shop are like eco-friendly home goods, sustainable clothing, clean beauty, skincare, bath and body. I also have fair trade items and non-alcoholic beverages.
What is the basic vision or principle of your business?
Generally, when I have people come into the store, because I have an actual physical location in Long Beach, California. Actually, I started with pop-ups during the pandemic. As I was working full-time, I slowly developed the website and had e-commerce sales, and then decided to go full-time this year. The idea is that all of the products that I have are meant to benefit people, animals, and planets. Everything that I have is going to be cruelty-free. A lot of the products that I have also are vegan, although not everything is vegan. I like to look at things that are health positive, hence the non-alcoholic beverages. A lot of the beverages that I have also are gluten-free, or they're diabetic conscious or friendly. A lot of the ingredients that are used in the products, they're trying to make sure that they're not going to harm people, that they're actually going to consider all of the different potential ailments that somebody might have, or, just people who want to actually live healthier and consider what they're putting into their bodies.
I met you about a year ago when you came to my Scrum product owner class. What you were doing before, and why did you join our course?
Years ago, I was an actress, sort of made a decision to go back to school, had a dream of going to UCLA, so I kind of quit the entertainment industry to go full force working towards getting into UCLA and then becoming a journalist. So that was sort of what I did after I graduated. And then as the media world and landscape really started changing, a lot of publications were being shut down, sort of natural progression was to go into marketing. So when I met you, I was actually on a creative team, because my sort of marketing, starting with writing and digital management, it also very naturally, went towards design. I'm designing web pages, designing email marketing. I was doing creative production, working with creatives. I was helping to lead creatives a number of different major projects. All of that said, I was doing a lot of project management. I think one of the reasons why Scrum, Agile, I really wanted to learn about it. I found, especially because I was working on projects where I was really the center sort of collaborator between a number of different teams, whether or not that was the creatives, the marketers, product marketers, or the developers, designers, all of the stakeholders that would be involved. I started to find it very difficult, especially working in different time zones and on international projects. I was finding it difficult to really manage that all. So I had kind of heard from different people who had practiced and studied Scrum that it was really like one of the best ways to just kind of pivot and iterate as you're going along, and to kind of go with that flow of what's working and what's not, and figuring that out out as you go along, instead of the way that a lot of project managers, or the way that I was project managing, which was sort of the old school way of like, this is our goal, this is what we're working towards, and we can't steer off of that goal. And then, like when you're working with a lot of different people, you realize that everyone has a different way of looking at things, and to be able to really shift while you're in the midst of trying to meet, hit milestones and whatnot is super important. So that's where I was when I met you, and why the product owner course was extremely helpful for me.
And then I followed you on LinkedIn, and one of the things was you starting a business. What prompted you to go ahead and start a business, and what were some of the drivers?
I had actually started the business itself. I had started during the pandemic, just needed the extra income at the time. Also, this is something that I had been wanting to do for quite some time. I didn't really know to what capacity I was going to have a business, but I knew that I wanted to do something outside of my everyday work. So during that time, obviously, communities, everyone was sort of cut off from that face-to-face interaction, which I really enjoy. I had started a podcast just to kind of, connect with other people, to learn about the different ways that people were making a difference at that time in our lives, in our history. I had met somebody who was going to start putting on these big outdoor events because stores were still closed. I thought, oh, this is amazing. It's a way for me to actually get out and interact with people, even with a mask on, whatnot, that's fine. But at least I'm, in person, and I'm not just Zooming. And so that's really how I started in 2020. But fast forward to 2020 when we met, I was just really, really wanting to stretch my feet a little bit, stretch the boundaries of what I had been doing, and it turned out at the right time for myself and for the company. So, so I just kind of took the leap. And here we are.
That's amazing. People shy away, and you actually took the leap. I was curious, were there any things in the class that were some learnings that you took to your business?
Yes. One of the things that I remember learning really was doing the backlog and the sprints, like the working towards the larger vision, which is something that I had already done with businesses that I was working on. I had always had this sort of North Star, greater vision. To be quite honest, if I think back at it, the product owner class, and then later I also took the Scrum Master course, I think in some ways it gave me it sort of inspired me to realize that I could do something that was, way, way greater than maybe I had given myself credit for prior to that. Learning how to write your backlog, how to really figure out all of the things, every single detail, that the neighborhood and like the market research and all of the things that kind of come along with that. And then going through the process of what do I want the contract to look like, the negotiations and all of those things. And then once the contracts were signed for the location, now I have to be the designer. I have to build out what the interior space is going to look like. And I mean, all of these things had just been in my head before. Really to write it all out and to kind of visualize it, and then also figure out how, once the space was open, how the online experience was going to sync up with the in-store experience. And it was a lot. It was a lot to take in and a lot to think about. Understanding how a product owner does it, because obviously there are a lot of moving parts when you're working on, a major project. I think that was really what helped me a lot with
product ownership or Scrum. We go through a process, and one of the first steps of the process is they ask you why. Why do you want to teach? Why? What are you trying to accomplish? And we have this thing about being a servant leader, being someone who serves the community and makes the community better, or make people's lives better, or how they work better. And so, again, looking at what you're doing with your business, especially the non-cruelty, the non-alcoholic beverages, the clothes, the way you have them, the physical space that you have, what is your why? Why are you doing this?
I'd say there's probably a number of reasons really that inspired me in the beginning, and it stretches back 8 years ago about. Actually, it probably even goes further than that. What kind of prompted me to look into potentially having a business that was in this realm. I had a number of personal experiences that happened all within a relatively short amount of time. I had some health issues pertaining to foods that I was eating, beverages I was drinking, things like that. I was having skincare issues, like some of the beauty products that I had been using for many years. All of a sudden, my skin just started reacting to them in a very strange way. And then I was also taking a course at that time for a company that I was working with that focused on animal conservation and taxonomy and just understanding the nature of things, how different species look, the different ways that they do, and the way that they eat, and all of these things, not just animals, but also plants. Why, naturally, why all species are created the way that they are. I was kind of going through this life, aha sort of moment where I realized I have to change the way that I'm eating and what I'm consuming. I have to change what I'm putting on my skin, onto my body. At the same time, I was learning about the nature of all things. I had this aha moment actually in the class, and where I learned about the demise of orangutans and in the wild due to palm oil and the production of palm oil and how palm oil was really in like all of our ingredients. It was an enlightening but also very devastating moment for me because I love animals. I remember going on my way home from this class and thinking like, all of these things that are happening in my life, this awakening, I have to do something. I have to do something, whether or not it's just teach, learn first and then teach others about why this is important. I wasn't sure at that time what it meant and what it was going to be, but I knew that it felt like a calling to me that I needed to make a difference in some way. Over the years, I think it just, it sort of morphed into this like, okay, because I thought maybe it would be a brand, or maybe it just morphed into this like, it has to be a space. It has to be a community-driven space, somewhere that people can come in and I can tell them firsthand and I can hear their stories about why are they here shopping for these things. That's been my driving force. And even like all of these years when working full-time for other companies, and I truly enjoyed and learned so much from how other companies ran their businesses or what the message was for their brands. And actually one of the companies that I worked for worked on air purifiers. I learned all about air quality and why it's important, like not only what you're eating and what you're putting on your skin, but what you're breathing in. I just took all of those learnings, and the more I learned, the more I realized that I really wanted to do something that made a difference and that made me feel like I was doing something good in the world with all of the experience and skills that I had picked up along the way.
Thank you so much for sharing.
Sure.
So where do you see your business in the next 3 to 5 years?
I would love to be able to expand, maybe add some locations. Right now, the way that my store is set up, it's modern mercantile, but I like to say it's like a conscious concept store because there's a little community area. Because I do have the non-alcoholic beverages, actually, in fact, where I'm sitting right now, this is the little lounge of my shop, but because I do have the non-alcoholic beverages, I custom built a bar area so people can come in and they can actually I have free tastings, or they can buy a single can of something so they can try it before they buy a 6-pack. So it's nice to be able to have people come in, but it's a small space. It's my first location. So, I'm starting to recognize the more I add to it, the more I'm like, oh, I need more space. So I would love to be able to expand, add more of a community area where it's kind of separated from the shopping area. That would be the hope, I'd say, in the next few years. And of course, building it out a little bit more online as well, now that I have like a physical location.
How do you keep yourself fresh, learning more from different areas in your space, the business space, as well as things that you probably learn from the product management space, which is more about getting organized and getting better? How do you keep yourself up to date now?
I'm really naturally a curious person. Like, I love learning. I don't ever see a time in my life where I wouldn't want to learn something else. I mean, to the point where, when I started that podcast, one of the reasons I had started, of course, I wanted to be able to communicate and meet other people in the industry that I was interested in going into. But I also had never done a podcast. I had worked on creative production. I had worked in digital ads, email marketing, all of these different things, but I had never done a podcast. If I don't know how to do something and I'm curious about it, I'll just try to do it. I just try to learn it, or, I listen to podcasts a lot. Even I have a very short commute from my home to the shop. And even if it's only 15 minutes in the car that I'm listening to a podcast, and I listen to it for, 5 days or however long it takes, I use my time wisely. At least I try. Books, I like reading. And so, yeah, I'm just always sort of on the lookout for new things.
What's your podcast called?
Wellest Life. It was all about, a very similar stuff that my shop is about. I interviewed someone who had been in fair trade, and, she was like really behind making sure that products that we buy or that, stores sell are considering like their workers and taking care of people and making sure that not just that they're paid fairly, because that's, subjective really to where people live and whatnot, but also just that the conditions that they're working in are fair, and that they're not being harmed in any way. So there was that. I also spoke with a wonderful couple who they do olive oil. They make olive oil. The husband was from Italy, and his father, his family they had like a big farm and had been producing olive oil for many generations, and they told me all about how there's sort of some not so good things to learn about the olive oil industry, which I had no idea about. So, just really, I guess taking that next step of not just speaking to customers that are coming into the store and hoping that will be my, journey in the next year.
What advice would you give someone that wants to grow in their career next?
One, do your research, really do some research, but also I took a long time. My research was, like I said, it started like 8 years ago. I wish, in hindsight, that I would have just dived in earlier, because, you're just not ever going to be prepared. You're not ever going to know enough to feel like you have it all down. You're just not. Like, until you actually do it, you're just not going to know what it takes. And so research is important, feeling like you're ready. Like, I don't believe in just like throwing, everything to the wind and kind of just going without having any idea of, what your plans are and what your goals are and all of those things. Like, set goals, do market research, figure it out. That's why I think also starting as a side hustle is a really good idea if you can, but then don't take too long to just do it, just because, eventually you may just come to that point where like, gosh, I've taken this long, and the time, some things have passed me by, like I think like some of the products, the industries for the products that I have, had I jumped sooner, I would have been at the head of the game, instead of like now trying to catch up with a lot of other things. If if you're interested in taking a next step or moving along in your career, do your research, but then just do it. Like, really just do it and have faith that you'll pick things up along the way. You'll learn. I guess that's what I would say.
Well, that resonates a lot with how what advice I give, because I think that one of the things I started was this podcast, a YouTube channel. And one of the things I learned from somebody that I went to a course with, they said, get going, which is, even if it's a side hustle, get going now, get good after a while, and then get smart. So, for example, in my podcast and my YouTube, I would say that I'm at the get good point. Last year I was at get going, and hopefully at some future date I'll really get smart. But that's my hope.
That's really great way of looking at it. Get going, get good, and then get smart.
Thank you so much for sharing.
This has been fun. I'm really happy that we had this conversation, and I hope I do what I've said, like, does kind of light a little spark in somebody.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Wow, I'm so happy for Brandi's success. And if implemented with discipline, these 5 elements really work. I'm going to share the product worksheets that will help you incorporate these 5 product elements in your product today, absolutely free, to begin your journey towards a profitable business. Scan the QR code and download these worksheets now. And if you like the content of this video, please like and subscribe. See you next time.